Okay, let me start with an anecdote. So in 2003, that was the first Shavuos that I was in yeshiva. So Rabbi Che gave the Shavuos shir, and it was on the Isser Malacha on Yom Tov. And the way that Shavuos shir worked back then was we would have like we'd have a packet of tons and tons of sources, and like everyone would madly like be preparing them for like I guess as early as we got them, so like weeks ahead of time. And then Rabbi Chait would give shir on both mornings of Shavuos, and it would be like back in those days, it was like 4 or 5 hour shir, each day. And usually, what would happen is he would go through all the sources, raise like dozens of questions, several dozen questions, and usually he would make like one move at the end of the first day, and then everyone would like talk about it and like review it and stuff like that. And then the second day he would like carry it through and then show how that one svar like answered all the questions. So for this first Shavuos year, I guess I didn't know that this was unusual back then, but I found out by talking to people. So he raised several dozen questions, and then he went to like 3 or 4 or 5 Rishonim. I don't remember. This is a long time ago, and he worked through all of them just to like show how they tried to answer these questions. And then he said, so you see one thing clearly from here. No one knows what they're talking about. and then he went to the Rambam and showed how like the Rambam Svara like answered everything. And so I remember that being a thing where like sometimes you go through a sugya and like you see that the meforshim take such radically different approaches, sometimes diametrically opposed, that it's clear that like that they struggled with it and that there's no like common, sometimes the machlokas is not very far apart, but sometimes there's like, you could tell there's like a common foundation and then they're just diverging in the nuances. But when you see like tons of different approaches, and that shows that there's, that either no one knows what they're talking about or like, or it's a very difficult area. Okay, so that's the preface for today. Okay, so we're going to focus on 3 pesukim today. I think it's 3 or maybe 4. Let me share the screen, and I'll share the whole screen. What I want, my plan is we're going to read the pesukim, try to translate them, and then we're going to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 meforshim. Okay, and I'll show you how their answers are so different, and then that's kind of like a matir for me to show you my answer, which I think works. But I feel like if I came up with this answer and they all said something different, then that'd be I'd be a little bit more hesitant to say that this is the answer. But like I think you'll see that like mine is at least as plausible as theirs, if not more. And I also think that what I'm going to say is like in line with what some of them are saying. I don't think it's like it's not an original answer. Okay, so the 3 pesukim we're going to focus on here. Oh, so just review the experiment. Okay, so the way we defined it, phase 1 was seeking chachma, or seeking knowledge as a panacea, as a way to solve all the problems. And then he ended up finding that chachma revealed more problems and therefore caused more anger and more pain. Step 2 was the opposite extreme, is escaping into partying to try to drown out the pain of the reality. And that doesn't work because number 1, it's maholal, it's mad, it doesn't actually change anything. And number 2, mazo osa, it doesn't accomplish anything. So he's not satisfying his drive for accomplishment. Phase 3 was enjoyment of olam hazeh. So that is combining chachma, drinking, and material enjoyments, including planning and building. And so that's where he kept the buzz going, kept his chachma with him, and then just went all in on amassing objects and making projects and building stuff and accomplishing more than everyone. And that worked while he was involved in it. But then once he stopped and reflected on everything he did, so then he realized it's all worthless, and what did this actually accomplish? And I'm really just no better off than when I started. So that failed. Phase 4 was saying, okay, what was I saying? Oh yeah, security and chachma. That was what I called it. Is he recognizes he's not going to achieve anything, like any happiness through achievement. That's just an infinite goal. But maybe I'll just live the life of Mishlei and like accomplish more than the fool accomplishes, or not accomplish more, sorry, and get more better results than the fool. The chacham's eyes are in his head. The fool walks in darkness. But then he realizes that number 1, I'm going to die just like the fool, and I could die at any second. And there's no guarantee that the chacham is going to protect me from it. I could die at the age of 30 and the fool could live till he's 90, So there's a certain futility that sets in. And we said that this is the first time he mentions death. which means that this is when the immortality fantasy was punctured. And immortality fantasy being that you feel like you're going to live forever, and then when you realize your mortality, you start to question like, well, what's the point of all this? Even though rationally he can show that living a life of chachma is better than foolishness, there's this like despair of like, what's the point if there's no guarantee? And that showed that he was really looking for security. And then phase 5 was, okay, well, maybe if I can't live on, I can create something that will live on. I can create a legacy that will live on. And then he realizes, nope, no guarantee of legacy either, because if it's, if you give it to your son, then he might squander it, or he might end up, something might happen to him, or a fool might, or take over, or a Russia. And so you can't have a legacy either. So immortality of legacy is out of the picture. And then we get to our 3 pesukim for today. So before we do that, any questions on all that? That was a brief review. Okay, so let's try translating these 3 pesukim, because this is I view this as not the end of phase 5. I view this as like the conclusion, the first conclusion of the experiment. And I say the first conclusion because throughout the book he does reach different conclusions as he goes, but this is the first time he's settled on some answer. Okay, so I'm going to translate as literally as possible, and I'll ask you when you think that there's or you chime in when you think that there's something wonky about my translation, or when you think it should be translated differently. Okay, so ein tov ba'adam, there is no good for man, sheyochal v'shasa. Now most meforshim insert the word except, okay, because they say it grammatically doesn't make sense, and then they also show other cases where he uses that same form in Sefer Koheles, where you have to just put the word except. So like, he said, Ezra says you have to add the word rock or something like that. So there's no good for man except that he eat sheyochal v'shasa, and drink, and hera es nafsho tov, and show his soul good. Okay, now in my translation, when we read through the whole thing, I think I translated this as show himself a good time. That was just according to one interpretation. Literally, hera es nafsho tov, show his soul good, ba'amalo, in his toil. Okay, then I don't know what punctuation to use, but we'll go with a semicolon. Gamzo ra'isi, this too I saw. Ra'isi ani. I don't know why he has to double that. I think that's stylistic. Kimiyad ha'elokimhi, that it is from the hand of God. Okay, here's where it gets difficult. Ki mi yochal umi yachush chutz mimeni. For who will eat and who will yachush? Any takers for yachush?
Be concerned, be hasty.
Yeah, okay, good. So those are the 2 translations, I think. Okay, who will care or be hasty, okay, except for me. Kila Adam Shetov Lefanav, this is 26 now. For to the man who is good before him, I'm pretty sure this is a capital H, Nasan Chachma, he has given wisdom and knowledge, V'simcha, and joy, or rejoicing. I'm not sure which one it is. V'lachote, but to the sinner, he has given the inyan, and so I think most of them say that this means an urge or preoccupation. Le'esof lichnos, to gather and amass. Laseis latov lifnei halakim, to give to the one who is good before God. Okay, this too, gamze hevel urus ruach, is futile and a breaking of spirit. Okay. So our job tonight is to figure out what these pesukim mean. So before we look at meforshim, any takers? Anyone have a theory about what he means by this, and how this flowed from the last phase where he realized that he can't leave a legacy?
It kind of sounds like he's saying, since leaving anything over isn't going to be effective, you should enjoy that which you have.
Right. Okay, good. So that fits in very well with the context and with 24 and 25, right? That I got all the stuff, I can't take it with me, so who should enjoy? And I don't know if my kids are going to even enjoy it or if they're going to squander it. So I might as well eat everything, right? Take all your wealth, invest it in pies, and then eat all the pies, right? So but now 26 is problematic though. Okay. What is 26 saying?
I mean, the way that I was hearing that was that the person who's good before him, he is like getting to enjoy what someone else amassed.
Yeah, right. So that's what it sounds like he's saying. It sounds like he's saying that the sinner has this urge to amass all this stuff. So he's going to accumulate a lot of stuff and he's going to give it to the guy who is good before God. So the question is, how does that work? Like, is that hashgacha? Is it natural? If it's hashgacha, I mean, I'm under the impression here, and maybe this is just my methodological premise here, that Koheles doesn't talk about hashgacha pratis. And I mentioned this in the first or second shiur that Koheles only uses the shame of Elokim, and Ibn Ezra says that it's the same God that's talked about from Bereshit until Vaychulu, which is the God of nature, right? The God, not Yokei Vavke, that God who intervenes and has mercy on man, but God who's midas adin. So my working premise here is that this is not talking about hashgacha pratis. So if it's not hashgacha pratis, then what does it mean that he gives over all the stuff that the guy amasses and gives it to a person who's good before God? I mean, it doesn't seem like that actually works in real life. You got a lot of people who die rich and then their money doesn't go to someone who is a tzaddik. Like there's that when I was growing up, I forgot what her name was. There's a famous like billionaire woman who like left all of her money to her dog, and it was a big like scandal, and I think like she set aside some for like animal shelters, but like it was like mostly just to her one particular dog, So unless the dog is a tzaddik, I mean, maybe he's a gilgul, but I guess he wouldn't be a gilgul into a dog if he was a tzaddik. Anyway, so what's the
It was I think Leona Helmsley or something.
Yes,
like
that was her name. That was exactly her name. Yeah, Leona Helmsley. Yep. I mean, I guess that the dog's not going to be a Russia or a fool.
She says you're 12 million to her dog. It's ridiculous.
Oh, so I guess she wasn't a billionaire. It was only 12 million. Yeah. Yeah. Alrighty. Yeah. So how does the money get to the tzaddik or to the? No, I shouldn't say tzaddik. He didn't say that. How does it get to the one who's totally Lifnei Hashem? And also, what is the connection, I guess, between that and 24 and 25? Because 24 and 25, where did he get that money from? So he got that money from working. So is he saying that like he shouldn't have done that? And if he was really good before God, then God would have just hooked him up, like taking care of him and given him all the good stuff from the Rishayim?
Can I ask like maybe a further question on this?
Sure.
On 26?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I could see someone arguing, it's not like worth it to gather things. But
yeah.
If you want to get stuff, gathering is the way to do it. Like what could possibly be more effective than that? Like, I don't know, just giving it to one who's good before Elohim, like it seems like how could that person end up with stuff more than someone who's gathering?
That's a good point. Right. Yeah. So that strengthens the question. Right. Yeah, that highlights the need to explain the mechanisms here. Oh, one more question also, by the way. What does it mean at the end, Gamze Hevel Rus Ruach? Doesn't it sound like a good thing? Like God gives it to the guy who's good before God. So how is that Hevel and Rus Ruach? Or what is Hevel and Rus Ruach? Is he saying that he thought that it is given to the guy who's good before God, and then that belief is a Hevel and Rus Ruach? Or does he mean that the phenomenon is a Hevel and Rus Ruach that, and if so, then he doesn't explain it. Okay, so are we sufficiently confused by the pasuk, the pesukim, such that we need meforshim now?
I feel confused.
Okay, good. We got one taker. Okay, so let's go to. So I did this pecking order here, because for a reason. So I started off with the Metzudas David because since we were familiar with his approach, and since this really talks about his approach explicitly, that Sefer Koheles is about gathering material possessions. So I thought that we already have some background here. And also I thought about trying to conceal my biases in reading it, but I feel like my tone's gonna come through, so I'm just gonna lean into it, okay? Yahush, he learns as chashash, so to worry, okay? So who will worry about it or be concerned about it more than me? Okay, here we go. And I don't know if I can, if I understand every point here. Okay. Ein tov ba'adam bitmiya. Okay, so that I mentioned, I think when we read it through in the read through, is he's not saying there is no good. He's saying, is there any good, right? Or is there no good? So he says, V'chi ein zeh davar tov ba'adam sheyochel v'yishteh ka'avas nafsho. Is this not good for a man to eat and drink and in accordance with the desire of his soul? V'lo yikmatz, and not to, what does kamatz literally mean? I have to look this one up. Kamat is, according to this dictionary, to take a handful, okay, and gather or take leman heniach osher levan of achrav, in order to leave the wealth to his son after him. We'll go summarize after we do the full pasuk. V'hera'ah ulaharos tov lenafsho, and to show good for his soul beha osher habalob amel, regarding the wealth that comes to him through toil. Rotalomar, here we go now. Lasos bot tzedakah v'chesed, to do with it tzedakah and chesed, laman tire nafsho tova gumul hanitzchi, in order to show his soul a goodly eternal reward. So what does it sound like he's saying here, or asking here, I guess? So do you tell me if this sounds like what he's saying? So we were saying it sounds like he's saying, well, I got all this wealth, I might as well enjoy it. And we were putting emphasis on shiyochel v'yishteh. He seems to be putting the emphasis, I mean, he acknowledges yochel v'yishteh k'avas nafsho, but he puts the emphasis on hera es nafsho tov, which means I might as well give all this wealth to charity. Sounds like what he's saying? Is there any good other than that? Any objections to that reading? I'll take that as a no. Okay, let's see. Let's go on. Gam zeh. So now the pasuk says gam zeh. Is this also gam zeh hevel? Gam zeh. No, gam zo zeh ra'isi ani kimyat ha'elokimi. I also saw that this is from God's hand. Okay. Rotza lomar af shezeh uviyad ha'adam. Even though this is in the hand of man, im kol zeh ra'isi b'sichli asher hi matana la'adam miyad ha'elokim. Nevertheless, I saw that this is a gift to man from God. Lahantos libo, and I don't know if that's a typo. I feel like lahantos is not a word. I think it's lahatos or lintos. I don't know what lahantos is. Lahantos libo lazeh, to incline his heart to this. Al kinire, because it was apparent to Shlomo sherob bnei adam lo yasu kain, that most people don't do this. Okay, so it sounds like what he's saying here. You tell me if this is a good read here. Sounds like he's saying, even though rationally, then if you have all this money and you can't take it with you and you don't know what's going to happen to it, so rationally you should give it to tzedakah and chesed. But Shlomo sees that people don't do that, so he says the inclination to do that, even though it's biyat ha'adam, even though technically you have bechira, the inclination to do that is from God, and most people don't do that. Don't know where he's getting that from, but that seems to be what he's saying. I mean, he's getting it from the fact that really that's, in other words, like this. He's interpreted himself into a box, because he says he's trying to say that. See, I thought that the matas elokim is the wealth itself. He's trying to say that the hera es nafsho tov, that the inclination to give it away is from God. And so that's why he raises the question of Bechira. He says, even though this is in the hand of man, it is also from God in the sense that God will give you the inclination to do this or not. Let's see if he clarifies. Kimi yochal, musav lamala lomar kimiyat ha'elokim. That's going on what it says above, that it's from God. Lakshav kain, to think this. So it's from God to think this thought that who's going to eat except for me. Velomar kimi roy le'echol. See, when I read this, I read it as lechol mishle, and I was like, that sounds delicious. But then I realized it's lechol mishali. To say that who it is proper to eat my stuff. Umihu chutz mimeni roy lachshov b'shali shel yelech la'avod ulamaher lahanos mimenu. And who other than me is fit to think that my stuff shouldn't go to waste and that I should be quick to benefit from it. Okay, so I don't know what he's adding here, but he's saying, I think he's expanding on the thought that prevents people from giving tzedakah. That, in other words, he's viewing it as two competing thoughts, that basically you have all this wealth and there are two directions you could go. One direction is the desiring and the consumption, who's going to eat this except for me? The other desire to go is is I should give it all to tzedakah, and he seems to be saying that which direction you're inclined in is from God. Okay. Then he says, "Shetov lefanav," the one who is good before God, lifnei halukim v'neskar b'inyan, v'rot lomer lemisha ma'asav ritzuim lifnei halukim, to the one whose actions are desirable before God, nasan chachma v'das, he gave wisdom and knowledge, lasos b'chayav tzedakah v'chesed, to do in his lifetime tzedakah and chesed, v'simcha lechov lishtos ka'avas nafsho, and he also gave simcha to eat and drink according to the desire of his soul. V'lachote, but to the sinner, of alachote nasan belibo inyan v'cheshek leso hon rav laman yihye mishumar la'adam tzadik shehu yikach hakol. So to that guy, he gave the desire to collect a lot of stuff, to preserve it for the tzaddik who's going to take everything. Gamze hevel, Rotzelamar af sheba hon shekibetz liad adam tzaddik, even though this wealth comes into the hand of the person who's a tzaddik, im kozeh gamze hevel, so that too is hevel, meaning the fact that it comes into the hand of the tzaddik. Ki yoser haylo toelas im haya ose bo tzedakah v'chesed be'atzmo mirtzono. It would have been better if he had done tzedakah by himself with his own will. Now, who's he talking about here? Is he talking about the sinner? And he's saying that it's futile that the sinner's wealth ended up with the tzaddik because the sinner should have used it to give tzedakah? Is that how you're understanding it?
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, okay. Urus ruach ki al ki nilkach mimenu bal korcho. Yeah, so what is a frustration? The fact that it was taken from the sinner against his will. Shelo b'tovaso neged ratono, not in accordance with his benefit against his will. So what is it? I mean, so it sounds like the message he's advocating here is, what conclusion did he reach? That you can't take your wealth with you, so you better give it away to tzedakah and chesed. And if you don't, so then God is going to ensure that it gets to a tzaddik. He doesn't explain how that's going to happen. And he threw in that part earlier about how we see that it's from God to incline you one way or the other. And I don't know what he means by that. Okay, but we at least get like what the upshot is that he's saying you should give away your wealth to tzedakah and chesed. Okay, so that's approach number one. All right. See, I ended up liking this one. I when I was going to read it, I thought I was not going to like it when I read it beforehand. Okay, next we're going to go to the Ibn Kaspi, and we're not going to read all of him.
Who is that?
Who is the Ibn Kaspi?
Yeah.
So he was a rationalist philosopher who, I mean, in the 1300s, I think. Let me just see if they have a bio on him. 1280 to 1340. Maimonidean, he did write a Pirush on the More Nevuchim, but he also wrote a lot of other philosophical works. Very creative mefarish. Just not well known because he's in... he wasn't printed lately. Okay, so he says, "Ki mi yochal umi yachush chutz mimeni, kumosh hudaticha, ki shlomo derech melitza shiris miyachas hadvarim la'atmo." Okay, so he's ascribing these things to himself. That must be an earlier point. But here's ha'olim mizeh. Okay, so what's the conclusion from this? Lahodianu ki haminhag haroy l'shalim. So what is the proper minhag for the person who's perfected? Ach behechrachi b'tzorchei aguf. So even when it comes to taking care of your essential needs, like your bodily needs, shelo yeshiv bam beyishuv ushkida derech hanaasan k'minhag hagiborim lishtos me'achrei b'neshef. So you shouldn't basically like sit there and like, you know, spend a lot of time catering to your body. Okay, ma'arichan al shulchan, you know, having long meals. Rak ve'achaltem b'chipazon. You should eat quickly. So he's taking this literally. Mi yuchol umi yachush chutz mimeni. Who should eat and who should be quick other than me? So he's saying like that's the solution here. Okay, is like eat quickly. Kamosha yisurenu chachmenu zal, like Zal I think rebuke us, discipline us. Chatof achol chatof shaseh. Grab and eat and grab and drink. Okay, you should only eat fast food. That's the conclusion of Koheles. V'chein amar philosoph, and I tried to find this quote. It sounded very it did not sound Aristotelian or Platonic or like Socratic. I looked for it in the Stoics and I couldn't find it. Ha'olam hazeh kigesher ta'avru alav al tashuvu bo. A bridge is like, the world is like a bridge that you cross and then don't return through. I don't know what that means. L'chein whatever. Shlomo praised Atzmo himself. V'chihu me'ovre derech. He's just passing through this world. And even when he partakes of what is essential, V'im ki bebeso nimtzayim lefanav kol ha'inyanim hu melech shalim v'shalom hashket hayu b'yamav. So even though he had all this wealth around him, he only was a I don't want to say an ascetic because that implies like deprivation is good in itself, but he was he only partook of what was necessary for his body, and he didn't dwell on these pleasures. Okay, so it is advocating a sort of like a type of asceticism. All right. Now we're gonna skip this. Okay, compare that to the Rashbam. I think the Rashbam is next on my list. No, Shadal. Okay, well, we're going to skip to the Rashbam because the Rashbam is the diametrically opposed to this, I think. Okay. Ein tov ba'adam shiochal. Ein davar tov b'iskei ha'adam ela shiochal v'shaso. There is no good in the involvements of man except to eat and drink. Laharos la'atzmo tova ba'amal mamono. I guess that's a girsa ambiguity, mamono or mimenu. To show himself good in his toil of his money, asher tarach bo, which he toiled for. Kimina shemayim hu davar zeh. This comes from heaven, right? So you got your money that God gave you. She'ein bo hevel, and there's no hevel in it. Aval kol hadavarim halalu asher siparti lamala kulan divrei hevel heim. Oh, sorry, did I misread that?
Isn't he also saying that the only thing that's not hevel is eating and drinking quickly?
Yeah, I'm just confused about this she'ein bo hevel.
Because
and I see what you're saying. Yeah, right. You know, you're saying that the eating and drinking is not hevel, but all of the other efforts and stuff that I said about this. Yeah, I think that's the read. Okay. Kimi yochal shari hu mihu sheroi lecho lamaher lismoach ba'amali mi baladi. Who is proper to eat and to be quick to rejoice in his toil other than me? Valkain yeshli lecho v'lishtos v'lismoach. Therefore, I should eat and drink and rejoice. Betuv ba'amali, in happiness with my work. Ki la'adam shetov lefanav, shari la'adam shu tov lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu kamoni, the person who's good before God like me, shenasan HaKadosh Baruch Hu mazel le'asof mammon letzorcho ulhan aso, who got the fortune of gathering wealth, right? So I was one of the lucky ones. So then he should enjoy it. I should enjoy it. Ul'adam chote nasan HaKadosh Baruch Hu inyan le'asof mammon letzorach acher shu tov beinav. So this other guy who God gave the desire to gather wealth to give it to someone else, who's good in his eyes. Dugmas yachin rasha v'tzadik yobash. So this is like the pasuk in Eo. The rasha prepares, but the tzaddik will wear it. Okay, meaning it's going to get to the tzaddik. Gamze hevel. That is also hevel. V'nimsash al hachinam tarach bo'achote. So for that guy, it's hevel because he toiled for no reason. Valkein yeshli lechol v'lishtos v'lismoch ba'amali. And therefore, I should eat and drink and rejoice in my toil. So I don't understand all the details here, but it sounds like the upshot of him is not that you should be ascetic, and not that you should do tzedakah, but that you should eat and drink and enjoy. Is that a fair read of the Rashbam? Okay, so that's like very opposed. Okay, two more, and then we'll go to my approach. Okay, Shadal. So if I were able to do an Italian Hebrew accent, I would do it, but I've never heard that before. So you'll hear the Italian romanticism in this. Okay, it's very poetic. Now remember, Shadal's whole approach, which we read on the day that I switched approaches, is he says that the whole point of the book is that you should not live a selfish, egoistic lifestyle. You should live. Your concern should extend to other people. So here he goes on his little monologue here. Vod bir kavanas of Amar. So he quotes the pasuk. Meaning token kavanas Koheles levayer. So the content of Koheles's intent is to explain wherever way man conducts himself, there's not going to be any advantage in his toil. Now, by the way, note how closely his interpretation parallels with our understanding of the phases. Okay, it's only slightly different. If he goes on the route of chachma, tarbe ha-karaso b'kilkule ha'olam, his recognition of the imperfections of the world will increase. And he'll be angry about what he can't fix. So that's exactly what we said about the first phase. Okay. And if he goes to rejoice, he will not find a new thing to rejoice about every day. Unless he works for his entire life. So that sounds like it's combining phases 2 and phase 3. It sounds like in phase 2, he tried to rejoice, found out that didn't work because what does this accomplish? So then he tried to accomplish new things each day and found that he was happy, but only as long as he kept himself busy. Okay, so that's like combining those two phases. Okay, if he works to leave after him wealth and property, who knows whether his son who inherits him is going to be wise or foolish? Maybe he'll squander everything that his father amassed. And maybe some other guy will get it. I don't think it means non-Jew here. I think it means like a stranger. So I don't know if he means I'm going to acknowledge to Koheles. I'm not sure there. Here's the poetic part. Any man who walks on these paths will have no yisron, no advantage in his toil. A man who only loves himself, as if he's the only one in the world. A man who only sees good in his own flesh, and doesn't rejoice in the joy of his friend. A man who only feels enjoyment who does not feel enjoyment when he does acts of tzedakah and chesed. A man like this, who only lives for himself, and is not able to bear any good of heart. Is not able to bear with a good heart any light pain that comes into him. A man like this, his life is not a life. It would be better for him and better for the world if he was never created. Okay, so quite a forceful oratory there, right? Using some rhetorical devices like anaphora. Okay, Adam haroy lihikare Adam, but the man who's proper to call man. Okay, who's man qua man? Ha'ohev his atzmo ve'es kol ha'adam, who loves himself and all people. A guy who wants to tries to gather money in the upright way. Laman also spoke tzedakah v'chesed, in order to do tzedakah and chesed. Ish asher kol hatzarech elav hu ahuvo, a person who has who the only thing he needs is his beloved, people who he loves. I think. And he's happy when his friend is happy. Isha usechaya levanav, a person who makes wealth for his kids. Asher yadrich ba'orchosav, to guide on his path. So and if he doesn't have any kids, then he will gather in the poor. A person who pain is light in his eyes. This is sounding a little bit like Marcus Aurelius, isn't it? And the needs of others weigh heavily upon him. A person who's like this, who makes God and people happy. Where is the moment where he will not find a new happiness? What house is going to close its gates in front of his tzedakah? Where will he not find an opportunity to do good? When will he not be able to do good? Whether with his money, whether with his money, his body, or his words. What enjoyment is going to be good for his heart? Then what joy other than the joy of doing good things? How could the vicissitudes of the world sadden him? Which give opportunity for the generosity of his spirit. To fix them, whether a little bit or a lot. Who's happier than him? Who can produce good out of a bad beten. I don't know what it means by beten here. I don't know if it's like a bad lot or something, or bad birth circumstances. Of oneg mitoch nega, and joy out of affliction. Ahuv lamala nechman lamata uscharo ito b'simchas kiliosav. He's beloved above, he's desired below, and his reward is in the happiness of his kidneys. And kidneys mean something different back then. His thoughts. Yeah. Okay. So what's his message is be a good person and like do for others and find joy in giving, benefiting other people and doing tzedakah and all this other stuff. And then you'll always be happy. So very poetic message. Does not quite explain the thing about giving the wealth to the sinner, right? Kind of just doesn't explain 26. I mean, he explains half of 26. He says that if a guy is good before God, then God is giving him a lot of joy. And maybe you can say that the opposite is true of one who is not good before God. and that guy is a feudal spirit because he's basically like his life is not a life. I mean, that seems to be the direction he's taking, but it sounds like I don't quite get the transfer puzzle, but it's going to go to that guy. So that's the Shadal, the Italian. Okay. Now, the last one that I'm going to show you is the Ibn Ezra, and this is where I got my approach. So you're either going to say that Ibn Ezra is 1 and mine is 1, or you're going to say that I'm actually understanding the Ibn Ezra, okay? So let's just read it in English because this English is actually pretty good here. Actually, no, we're going to read it in Hebrew because the Hebrew is better. Okay. Kima, no. Kikol, kol hayom, no. 24 is where we start. Yeah, okay, that's why I highlighted it. Okay, so lo matzah ha'amal b'chol yigiyaso chutz mihamachal v'hamishteh. So there's nothing that a person will find in his toil other than eating and drinking. V'yachsar makom rak o hadomelo, and it's missing the word rak. Okay, so the only good for man is to eat and drink. Okay, and he gives an example from later on in Koheles. It says ki inam yodim lasos ra. It doesn't mean that they don't know how to do good. It means that they only know how. Sorry, they don't know how to do bad. It means they only know how to do bad. Okay. The inyan kimiyat ha'elokim hi. What does it mean? It's from the hand of God. Shamakabit mamon hu kamo shomer vein lo reshus laga'asbo ash yitin lo ha'elokim reshus. Okay, so this is an old idea, but I don't know why he's invoking it here. One who gathers money is like a custodian, and he doesn't have permission to use it until God gives him permission. Okay, so I don't know if that's just giving this idea that all of your money really is determined. It's not really, you can't control how much money you make ultimately because it's dependent on God, or if he's giving some other idea here. Okay, but here's where he gets to his main point. So who will eat? Zetama lama lo yakshav ha'amal l'kabitz mamon v'lo yachol kol ma she'es aveh. Why shouldn't a person who toils eat whatever he desires? Ki yochal mamono levad mimeni. Who's going to eat, consume his money other than me? Va'inyan hayesh mishu roy lechol oso kamoni. Is there anyone who's fit to eat like I am? V'yadua ki ha'omer levad mize inyanav hevel. Anyone who says anything other than this, that's futile. V'davar zeh levado yatsa mize haklal. This alone emerges from this general principle here. Okay, meaning that this is the only thing we see from all of this. This is the only thing that emerged from this entire analysis. Okay, another main I don't know what he means there. That's a grammatical point. Then he says v'yachush hukumo lemaher. That means to hasten l'chol taivaso, to hasten to fulfill all of his taivas. Kumo mehera chusha. Kila adam yesh adam shu tov lifnei halokim v'lo nasan lo amel rak nasan lo chachma v'das v'simcha b'mamon. So there is a person who's good before God that he didn't give him toil, but he gave him chachma, das, and simcha in mamon, in mamon ha'acher, in mamon of someone else, sheyegabo, who toiled in it. Kinyan yachin v'tzadik yobash. So this is the same guy that we've been talking about, where a tzaddik gets the stuff that the Russia amassed. Now here's the main point in my opinion. O yihi pirusho v'simcha, or what does it mean simcha? Not simcha in the mamon of someone else, but simchaso bechelko, being sameach in his own portion. Im rav im ma'at, whether a lot or a little. Okay, hold on to that thought. V'lachote nasan, and to the sinner he gave asik lihis asik, an involvement to be involved, lesof mamon, to gather money, v'yitnenu besof la'adam shu tov lifnei ha'elokim lasito lo, and to give it in the end to someone who's good before God. So the guy who was trying to amass money, it was futile and a breaking of spirit. Okay, so Ibn Ezra, in addition to saying stuff that confused us, does seem to be going with the Rashbam, saying that the only lesson we learn from this is that you should eat and drink and be happy with what you have. But he gives this O Pirusha, which is that maybe it means you should be happy with your chelek, whether it's a lot or a little, meaning not where a case where the Russia dies and gives you a bunch of money. That's not the simcha. It's happy with your portion. Okay. So based on this, let me tell you my pshat, and then you'll tell me if you think my pshat makes sense, if the Ibn Ezra makes sense, and if the Ibn Ezra is saying what I'm saying or something like that. Okay. And we're going to go to our we got to go to our PowerPoint with my, I have another diagram here or another cartoon. Hold on. Okay. So I'm going to attempt to explain something which they're not explaining, which is how is it that he can say that, first of all, how does Koheles' experiment end? So he realizes he is going to die, and since he can't reliably pass on a legacy, he might as well enjoy what Hashem gave him during his lifetime. So that's like the Rashbam and the Ibn Ezra. Hashem gave him chachma, das, and simcha, but if he doesn't enjoy it, what's the point of having it? Okay, so and this is the idea of sameach b'chalko. Okay, so according to my whole approach to Koheles, this is the first time the idea of sameach b'chalko shows up, and I think sameach b'chalko is a big part of the answer in Koheles, okay, of being happy with what you have and not striving after more. Okay, that's Ezihu Ashir HaSameach B'chalko. That's the true wealth. Okay, and again, the logic of the answers kind of flows from the definition of Yisron. If Yisron is more than what reality has, then the only solution is to be Sameach B'chalko, is to be happy with what you have and not clamor for more. Okay, but here's the part that I'm going to try to explain. Okay, so that explains this part, but this next part. What does it mean that God gave the chote the urge to amass, and he's going to give it over to one who's pleasing to God? And if you're saying that this is not hashgacha pratis, then how is it that the guy who's amassing, that God gave his wealth to the person who is good before God? How does that work? Okay, so here's what I think. Okay, here you have a guy who's samech b'chalko, and here you have a guy who's eno samech b'chalko. Okay, so if God gives wealth and success to both people, so he gives it to the guy who's samech b'chalko, and what is he going to do? He's going to be happy with it. And if he gives wealth to the guy who's not samech b'chalko and he's striving for more stuff, he's not going to be happy with it. Okay, so what's going to happen in the long run? Okay, so let's say, so the guy who's happy with it is enjoying what God gave him. Okay, but the guy who's not happy with it is not enjoying what God gave him. Okay, so what's going to happen with that wealth that that guy has?
It'll likely be tossed trying to find something he does enjoy.
Right. And then when he dies, what's going to happen to it?
Gone.
No, it's not going to be gone. It's going to end up with someone else. Right?
Okay.
It's going to end up somewhere, right? Whether his son or someone else. Okay. So then let's say that guy's not happy with it. Okay. Or let's say it goes into a bunch of people's hands and they're not happy with it. Okay. So eventually they're going to die, and eventually it's going to get to someone who is happy with it. Okay, now here's my move. My move is like this: is if let's say I wanted to give Yaakov a cookie, okay, and instead of eating it and enjoys it, he just sits there complaining about it until he dies, okay, and then he dies, and then Isaac takes the cookie from his hand, okay, who Isaac has miraculous long life or something like that, okay, so then he doesn't eat it, he just complains and complains and complains until he dies, and he gives it to Ezra, okay, and let's say now Ezra eats it, and because Ezra likes stale cookies. So effectively what happened, I gave it to Ezra because I gave it to Yaakov and he didn't partake of it. And then he didn't enjoy it. And then he gave it to Isaac and Isaac didn't enjoy it. And Isaac gave it to Ezra and Ezra did enjoy it. So it's as if it just ended up, the only one who actually enjoyed this gift was the person who actually enjoyed it, who was Sameach B'chalko. All the other people who were not happy with what they had never enjoyed it, so it's not really a matana for them. It's not matas alukim, you know, and that's why Shlomo basically says the buck stops here. Who's going to eat and enjoy this other than me, right? God gave it to me, and if you don't open a present, maybe cookie wasn't a good example. If someone gives you a gift wrapped gift and you don't open it, did they really give it to you? If you just die and pass it on, did they really give it to you? No, you didn't enjoy it. You did not open the gift, you know. So that's what Shlomo HaMelech's reasoning is, and that's how he can say that the guy who has this urge to amass is never going to receive the gifts that God gives him. God might be giving him a lot of stuff, but he's never going to enjoy it. So only the guy who enjoys it is the one who's taking advantage of what God gave him. That's yeah.
Aren't there Rishonim who do use their money though? In fact, they overuse it. They buy a ton of stuff they don't need.
And
like you said 2
right.
days ago, like that statistic that like 90% of wealth goes out of family within 2 generations.
Right, but are those people happy?
No.
But
they are using it though. They're not just keeping it.
Right, they are using it, but they're not deriving simcha from it.
Right.
Yeah, that's I think.
The cookie example is good because the only simcha of a cookie is eating it.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And that, yeah, right. That might even be why he uses the mushal of eating and drinking. I mean, because clearly that I don't think he means that the only joy in life is just consuming consumable, food, right? Like, but he means anything that God gives you. Okay, so yeah.
So what about the Rosh who buys 12 cars? Is he enjoying it or?
No, right? Because why is he buying 12 cars? First of all, he's probably not even practically enjoying it, right? the Russian who's buying 12 cars is doing it for status reasons, right? And that, first of all, he can always get a 13th car. Secondly, when his cars become outdated, so then he has to get the new model, or he's not going to live long enough for those to become antiques, and then he can't take it out and show it off, because the more he does that, then it's going to be, it exposes it to damage or to envy or to people, breaking into it. So he's caught between this conflict of, I want to show it off, but the more I show off, then the more I have to protect my wealth and all this other stuff. And then he wakes up, he's sleeping at night, and he's saying like, really, this is what I did? I bought 12 cars. Like, what did that do for me? Is my life all about cars? And then when he's on his deathbed, he's like, that's it. Like, I was the guy who bought 12 cars, and this is, I'm giving these like off the cuff answers, because this is really what the bulk of the middle of Koheles goes through, shows how you cannot be happy with these things that people are chasing, these lifestyles that people are chasing that they think are going to bring them happiness. So that he has to support through arguments. I don't think he's arguing that here. He's just stating his conclusion, and then he's going to spell it out in the ensuing prakim.
Right.
This diagram is trying to illustrate both shitas of the Ibn Ezra at once.
No, I think that. Oh yeah, you're right. Maybe it is.
That's what it seems like.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So I think, in other words, the way I'm explaining it is, it's one idea, but the Ibn Ezra is giving two possibilities about how to read the word simcha in the pasuk. Is the word simcha in the pasuk referring to the property he got from the other guy, the property and wealth he got from the other guy, and therefore he's saying God gave him the simcha, means God gave him this guy's wealth, is God gave him the simcha, or is it saying that God enabled him to be happy because he is sameach b'chalko? I think it's a linguistic F. Lafarge, or however he said it. I don't think it's a different idea. Yeah, Yehi Pirush. Yeah, it's a Pirush machlokus. It's not a idea machlokus. So that's how I understand the end of his experiment. So right now, and again, I'm not saying this is the end of his entire conclusion of the Sefer. This is at the end of his experiment. He realizes, okay, the only thing I should do with my life is be happy with what I have. That solves the Yisron problem. And if I don't use this, what's going to happen to it? And interestingly enough, this is not excluding Shadal. Okay, it's not talking about Shadal's answer, but he, in other words, any usage that he gets out of this that is part of his simcha b'chalko would be part of this. Meaning maybe doing tzedakah is also part of this. It's just he's not talking about it right now, and that's a question, like why is he not talking about that? That's why I kind of felt like Shadal and Mitzudas David, who say that this is about tzedakah, I feel like there is a more explicit way to reference that, like. You saw how specific he was in every phase. Say when he gets to this phase, I saw that there's nothing better than to give my money, to give tzedakah. But instead he talks about the tzaddik taking the money, and hera es nafsho and tov lifnei ha'elokim. Yeah, those talk about virtue, but like, is that really describing that the goal in life is to do for others? I'm not so convinced about that. That's why I think the Ibn Ezra is the best. Alrighty. So that's the end of this unit. We can really quickly just set up for next time, okay? Because next time is basically one question, okay? This is the famous, This is the famous a time for this and a time for that, okay? So now he goes into this thing, which when we were doing the read-through of Koheles, we noted that this is like feels like a new division in the book, and really it is a new division, because this is after this there's no psuchas and stumas for a very long time, or at all. I can't remember. So lakol zman there is a time for everything and a desire for everything under the sun. I'm contractually obligated to mention to you that there is a famous song that your parents know with this in it. Are you aware? No? Okay, so I'll have to send it to you, because if you...
yes, turn.
Turn, yeah. Okay, right, yeah. Yeah, anytime, it's like a thing that like people from the last generation, when you tell them, oh, I was learning Koheles, and a time for this, a time for that, they say, oh, did you know there's a song about that? Yeah. I mean, and it's virtually identical lyrics. I think they just like swap a few things just to make it rhyme or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'll try to remember to post it in the thingy. Okay. So a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to uproot the planted, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to breach, and a time to build, a time to cry and a time to joke or laugh. I mean, a time of eulogizing and a time of dancing, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to hug and a time to distance from hugging, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw. Throughout probably is better. A time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. Ma yisron haose basher hu amel. What advantage is there in the actions of one who toils? I saw I saw the inyan that God gave man to afflict him with or to be preoccupied with. Es hakol asher kol asa yafe beito. Everything he made, I think this is God. You know what? I gotta make this into 2 columns because I can't see. Everything as a kol asa yafe beito. God made everything beautiful in its time. Gam es haolam nasan blibam. That's what we read in Ibn Ezra last time. He also placed eternity in their hearts. Mibli asher lo yimtza ha'adam es ha'maaseh asher asa ha'elokim mirosh v'ad sof. Without him, man finding the action or the work that God created from beginning to end. Very confusing sentence. Yadati ki ein tov bam ki im lismoach v'lasos tov b'chayav. That could be read according to either the Ibn Ezra or Shadal. I knew that there was nothing better in them than to rejoice and to do good with his life. V'gam kol ha'adam shiyochav v'shasav ra tov b'chol amalo matas elokim hi. Okay, so also everything that man eats and drinks and shows and sees good in all of his toil, it's a gift of God. Yadati ki kol asher yasa ha'elokim hu yihyeh la'olam. I knew that everything that God will do will be forever. Alav ein lahosif umimenu ein ligroa. You can't add to it, you can't subtract it. V'ha'elokim asa sheyiru milafanav. And God did it so that people would be in fear before him. Yeah, I don't know how far this goes. And by the way, this is now at the end of my my Koheles, not the end, sorry. This is how far I get Be'iyun and Koheles in high school, and then I skip to 11. Okay, I do certain parts of the middle, but this is going to be new territory. So we're soon going to get into those who are in my Mishlei shiur. This is going to start to feel much more like my Mishlei shiur, where we're figuring everything out on the spot. Okay, yeah, for good or for bad. But the question here is going to be like this: is what is he doing in this ace thing? Why does he need to give so many statements like this? What is the connection between this and what came before and what came after? What does this idea mean that he placed eternity in their hearts? Even according to the Ibn Ezra, like what is the idea of the eternity thing? And then why does he seemingly repeat himself here? I mean, 12 and 13 seem to be a repetition of the end of chapter 2. That the only thing that's good is to enjoy, eat and drink and see good and do good during your life. And God gave it to you. So what's the point there? So I guess let's end off on those questions. Yeah, unless there's any other questions about what we did tonight. All righty. So I guess I'm going to stay on for the next year on the Mabul versus science, but we're breaking for now, and Bliner continue Koheles on Tuesday. And I'll announce this next week, but I'm pretty sure this will be in person next week. I mean, I'll still have it on Zoom, but availability in person. All righty. See ya either later or in 7 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome.